House Democrats are now moving forward with an article of impeachment accusing the president of incitement of insurrection, calling members back to Washington now to consider something that has never been done before, whether to impeach a president for a second time. We have now learned a vote could come as soon as Wednesday now. And so what then with a Senate trial that would follow? What we're learning on that front as well tonight. All of this as new and disturbing images come to light. All of it playing out after that rally with the president, during which he urged his supporters to march to the Capitol, saying, "You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to be strong," saying he'd be right there with them.
This is not just another Trump controversy. This is a warning flare. Something shifted this week inside the American legal system, and it didn't happen quietly. It happened with evidence, with urgency, and with consequences that are now impossible to ignore. What you're about to hear isn't political theater. It's a moment where power, law, and accountability collided, and only one of them can win. Let me walk you through what actually happened. Behind the headlines, federal prosecutors made a move they don't make unless they believe time itself is a risk. They filed an emergency motion, not routine, not procedural, emergency. And attached to that filing was something far more dangerous than speculation or testimony. It was a recording, a real one, captured from inside Donald Trump's own circle. According to court documents, that recording allegedly shows Trump instructing aides to disregard a federal court order, not to challenge it through legal channels, not to appeal it, but to ignore it. That distinction matters more than most people realize, because the moment a court order is issued, the law stops being theoretical. It becomes mandatory. Here's where it gets unsettling. The order in question came from a federal judge overseeing the unsealing of documents tied to Trump's financial dealings while in office. These documents aren't gossip. They're tied to constitutional questions, specifically whether Trump benefited financially from foreign governments during his presidency. That's not a gray area. The Constitution explicitly prohibits it unless Congress gives approval. That clause exists because foreign money doesn't just buy luxury, it buys influence. Prosecutors argue the recording captures Trump reacting to that order not with compliance, but with contempt, allegedly telling aides to stall, suppress, and treat the court's demand as a political obstacle rather than a legal command. And according to the filing, this happened after Trump had already been warned in a separate legal proceeding that similar conduct could carry consequences. That's not ignorance, that's repetition. Let's be clear about what that means. Judges do not issue suggestions. A court order is the backbone of the justice system. If powerful individuals can decide which orders they feel like following, the system collapses, slowly at first, then all at once. And this is where the pattern becomes unmistakable. Trump has a long history of treating courts as adversaries rather than authorities. When judges ruled against him during the Russia investigations, he attacked their legitimacy. When state courts pursued fraud cases, he framed them as political conspiracies. When federal agencies demanded compliance, he responded with delay, defiance, and public intimidation. What's different now is that prosecutors say they finally have Trump's own voice, confirming that this wasn't just rhetoric. It was instruction. Once that filing became public, the reaction was immediate and explosive. Trump launched a barrage of attacks against the presiding judge. Not legal arguments, not evidence-based rebuttals. Personal insults, accusations of bias, calls for impeachment, thinly veiled threats wrapped in political language, post after post, escalating in tone. Judges are not politicians. They don't answer to rallies. They don't respond to pressure campaigns. When a defendant targets a sitting judge during an active legal dispute, that doesn't help their case. It compounds it. Here's why. Judges care about conduct, especially conduct that suggests intimidation or interference. Prosecutors care about intent. And when a defendant reacts to judicial oversight with public attacks instead of legal filings, it strengthens the argument that they believe themselves to be above the process. Now zoom out. The judge Trump is attacking is not new to his legal orbit. This is the same judge who previously rejected Trump's claim of absolute immunity in civil cases related to January 6th. That ruling wasn't symbolic. It was foundational. It stated plainly that presidents are not kings, that the office does not grant lifelong immunity, that accountability does not expire when power changes hands. Trump never accepted that premise, and everything we're seeing now flows from that refusal. The documents at the center of this dispute reportedly involve high-value properties, foreign-linked transactions, and benefits that flowed through Trump-controlled businesses while he was in office. Prosecutors argue these weren't incidental, they were systematic, and they want transparency because transparency reveals patterns. According to the filing, Trump allegedly wanted the opposite. This is where the legal risk escalates sharply. Obstruction isn't about dramatic gestures. It's about intent to interfere with lawful process. If someone instructs others to hide documents from a federal court, that crosses a line. If that person held the presidency, the implications are enormous. And there's another layer here that cannot be ignored. Prosecutors reference discussions involving foreign assets, including a luxury aircraft linked to Qatar. The allegation isn't simply that Trump received access, it's that he asserted ownership while court scrutiny was active. That's not a misunderstanding. That's an assertion of entitlement, one that prosecutors say contradicts the legal record. Jack Smith's team didn't soften its language. They framed this as evidence of consciousness of guilt. In plain terms, prosecutors argue Trump knew the law, understood the risk, and acted anyway because he believed consequences wouldn't apply to him. That belief is now under direct challenge. What makes this even more dangerous for Trump is the source of the recording. According to reporting, it came from someone inside his own circle, not an opponent, not a journalist, someone with access, someone who decided documentation mattered more than loyalty. That's a signal prosecutors take seriously because it suggests internal fracture, and timing matters. This alleged instruction came on the same day Trump faced another courtroom confrontation involving defiance of legal authority. Same day, same posture. That repetition is critical. Courts look for patterns. Prosecutors look for defendants who fail to correct behavior after warning. This checks both boxes. Now let's talk about the broader context. Trump's financial empire is already under strain. New York has moved aggressively to enforce civil fraud judgments. Properties are being evaluated, assets identified, enforcement mechanisms triggered. The idea that Trump's businesses are untouchable no longer holds. Federal authorities are now examining whether some of those same properties functioned as channels for foreign funds. If that link is established, asset forfeiture becomes a possibility. And that's not political punishment, that's statutory consequence. There's also the issue of witness exposure. Prosecutors allege Trump referenced senior officials as potential tools to suppress evidence. If true, those individuals are now legally vulnerable. And when people face personal risk, loyalty evaporates, cooperation agreements appear, testimony follows. That's how cases expand. Trump's legal strategy has relied heavily on delay, distraction, and intimidation. But delay doesn't work when evidence accumulates. Distraction fails when recordings surface, and intimidation backfires when judges document it. The courts have already rejected Trump's immunity arguments. The Supreme Court has made clear that presidential status does not shield criminal conduct. Trump knows this. His lawyers know this, which makes the alleged behavior even harder to defend. And then there's the constitutional dimension. The emoluments clause exists because foreign influence undermines sovereignty. If a president profits personally from foreign governments, every policy decision becomes suspect. Prosecutors argue this case isn't about technical violations. It's about whether the presidency was monetized. That question now sits at the center of multiple investigations. Politically, the fallout is already visible. Some Republicans are distancing themselves, others are silent. Silence in politics is not neutrality, it's calculation. And calculations change when evidence becomes tangible. Recordings change everything. Allegations can be spun, documents can be debated. A defendant's own voice is harder to explain away, especially when it aligns with years of documented behavior. This is why impeachment conversations are resurfacing, not as theater, but as consequence. Defying court orders strikes at the heart of governance. It's not about ideology. It's about whether the rule of law applies universally. Grand juries continue their work, federal and state, multiple jurisdictions. When evidence overlaps, momentum builds. Emergency filings signal urgency. Prosecutors don't act quickly unless delay itself creates risk. Trump's public response has only deepened that risk. Attacking judges during active proceedings is self-defeating. Every post becomes potential evidence. Every accusation reinforces claims of intimidation. Every outburst strengthens the narrative prosecutors are constructing. And here's the larger truth. This isn't just about Donald Trump. It's about precedent. If a president can defy courts, suppress evidence, attack judges, and face no consequence, then democracy becomes optional. The system survives only if it enforces its own rules. That's why this moment matters. That's why legal experts are watching closely. And that's why this story isn't fading, it's accelerating. What happens next will define more than a single case. It will define whether accountability still functions at the highest levels of power. contempt hearings, potential indictments, asset seizures, political consequences. None of this is theoretical anymore. History will not judge this moment by the noise surrounding it. It will judge it by whether institutions held firm, by whether evidence mattered, by whether power finally met its limits. Stay informed, stay updated, and for clear, latest updates like this as the story ends. Make sure you like, subscribe, and stay connected.